My wife is really dumb, she has no clue about us. She'll be late today because of her part-time job, so let's take our time and enjoy ourselves. Dan, you're such a bad boy. Well, I know better than anyone how dumb your wife is. Let's quickly get a divorce and be happy together. I was listening to the conversation between my husband, Dan, and his mistress while looking at my smartphone. They really are idiots. Everything is completely transparent. I secretly left work early today to come home. Far from being clueless, I know everything. As I was sighing in exasperation, my daughter Hillary, who turns 5 this year, came up to me. Mommy, the basement door was open, so I closed it. How about that? Aren't I smart? Oh, is that so? Thank you, Hillary. Mommy was just about to close it. You really are a smart girl. Seeing my daughter Hillary puff out her chest proudly was endearing, but at the same time, my anger towards my husband, Dan, began to flare up. Dan. You'll regret deceiving your family for the rest of your life. I started preparing with a mischievous smile on my face. 9 hours later, after confirming Hillary had gone to sleep, I checked the time and it was 10:07 p.m. When I checked my smartphone, there were over 50 missed calls from around 8 p.m., all from my husband. I had deliberately ignored them, but finally, I answered the phone. Dan's voice, filled with urgency, burst through. May. You finally answered. What have you been doing? I've been calling over and over. A wife should answer her husband's calls immediately. Sorry. I had something very important to take care of. So, what's up, Dan? You seem really frantic. The thing is, I'm locked in the basement. For some reason, the door won't open. Hurry up and do something. I've been holding it in and I'm about to burst. Hearing his pitiful voice almost made me burst out laughing. There's no toilet in the basement, so that's what happens after 9 hours. By the way, the basement can only be locked from the inside. The lock Hillary closed was a padlock I had added later. Naturally, I attached it without Dan noticing, so he has no idea why the door won't open. That's tough, Dan. I'll come down to the basement right away to check what's causing the issue. Please do. Once the door can be opened, I'll unlock it from inside. Just head back to your room quickly. Thinking he was about to be freed, Dan seemed relieved. Such a fool, and he doesn't even know that this is just the beginning. As I approached the basement, I called out from outside the door. Sorry to keep you waiting, Dan. You can open it now. I need to come into the basement too. No. It's fine if the door can just be opened. I'm looking at company documents on the computer right now. Even though you're my wife, there are things I can't show you. You said you have something to do in the basement, did you forget something? I'll bring it up so you can go back immediately. Well, that's a natural reaction. If he opens the door, he'll face to face with me and his mistress. He needs time, so he wants to keep me away with any excuse. As if that would work. I know everything and am fully prepared. As if sounding the starting signal, I pressed on with certainty. Company documents? What are you talking about, Dan? Surely, there's something else you really don't want to show me? Like, maybe, the mistress sitting next to you? Mistress? What are you talking about? Don't say things that make no sense. Just come back already. Really, a wife should just quietly follow her husband's commands. It's common sense. I've never heard of such a thing, and I certainly don't want my inconsiderate husband lecturing me about common sense. I admit I was foolish to follow his lead, but that ends today. To strike first, I sent some data from his computer. Dan, can you still deny everything after seeing this? What the hell is this? How did you get this data? The data was footage from a hidden camera. It was the same footage I had watched on my phone 9 hours earlier. I had installed a hidden camera in the basement. So, I knew about his infidelity and exactly who he was cheating with. So, you're the one who locked me up. Do you have any idea what could happen to you for doing this? That's my line. Do you understand what's going to happen to you? Anyway, I'm opening the door now. Ignoring my husband, I opened the door to reveal him and his mistress, both struggling to hold in their need to use the bathroom. I slowly approached the mistress, speaking with a heavy dose of sarcasm. Looked like you were having a lot of fun. You two were mocking me, but you're the real fool, aren't you? Sis. Yes, the mistress was my sister, Mary. Wife is an idiot, and I know that better than anyone, my sister had said. Turns out, she was talking about her own little sister. May. Are you crazy for locking us up? There's only drinks in the basement, and it could be dangerous for us. The crazy one is you, sis. You openly cheated in our house, and you have nothing else to say for yourself? Our faces were so close they almost touched, and a staring contest began between me and my sister. The unusual tension between us left my husband flustered. Since when? Since when did you know? I kept track of your schedule to make sure I wouldn't get caught. Make sure you wouldn't get caught? Ha! Don't make me laugh. You left so many traces of your affair. It was 3 months ago that I found out about you and sis. It wasn't an exaggeration, the signs of my husband's infidelity were clear. Sudden business trips, increased overtime, frequent drinking parties, and weekend work all increased his time away from home. He even bailed on our wedding anniversary and Hina's birthday, repeatedly engaging in affairs. At home, he never let go of his phone, grinning as he exchanged messages with someone. The final straw was his sudden concern for his appearance. Since our dating days, my husband had been single-mindedly focused on work, indifferent to his hairstyle and clothing. He was clean but far from stylish, often saying that dressing up was a hassle. Yet, he started buying high-end brand clothes and visiting salons and spas. Suspicion was only natural. I found receipts and hair strands in your car. They were from when you two went to a hotel, right? It felt like you didn't even try to hide it. You, sneaking around behind my back. Even in a family, hidden cameras are unacceptable. I'm definitely suing you. But first, I need to use the bathroom. After that, we'll discuss what happens next. Don't you dare run. With his usual high-handed attitude, my husband glared at me while clutching his groin and heading for the exit. But he suddenly stopped in front of the door. His face turned pale as he realized something. Why are you all here? Standing at the exit were my husband's parents and his relatives, a total of 15 people. After I locked my husband up, my first task was to contact his parents and relatives. I knew that if it was just me, my husband and sister would make some excuse and try to escape. They looked down on me, thinking I was incapable of doing anything. So, I enlisted the help of his parents and relatives, and it seemed to work perfectly. Everyone there let out a deep sigh as they watched my husband start to panic. His father spoke on behalf of the group. You know exactly why we're here. What were you thinking, having an affair with your wife's sister? And doing it openly at home, no less. I can't believe my own son turned out to be such a lowlife. Look around, Dan. Everyone's furious with you. When my husband nervously glanced at the relatives, he saw them all glaring at him with their arms crossed, their faces twisted in anger. It was a chilling sight. Oh boy, everyone, please calm down. There's a reason behind this, you know. My husband tried to laugh it off, but every time he tried to speak, the relatives' faces turned even redder with anger. My parents were also there, letting out deep sighs. Seeing the terrifying scene, my husband quickly fell silent. The reason for their immense anger wasn't just because my husband had an affair and betrayed the family. He had always put on a good front in front of his parents and relatives, pretending to be a perfect husband. Most of his family worked for famous companies, making them an elite group. Like them, my husband graduated from a prestigious university and joined a well-known company. dedicating himself to his work to gain their approval. Now that his deceit and neglect of his family had been exposed, it was understandable that his parents and relatives were furious. A reason, huh? Then tell us, Dan. Why did you betray May and Hillary, and deceive all of us? At his father's question, my husband instantly fell silent. Immediately, his father's furious shout echoed through the room. Why are you silent, Dan? Hurry up and give us a reason we can accept. Everyone present, including my husband, flinched at the sheer force of his father's anger. It was that intense. My husband opened and closed his mouth like a goldfish, unable to speak. Of course, he couldn't. There was no acceptable reason for his actions. You said it yourself, Dan. You built this basement for Hillary because she loves singing and you wanted to support her dream of becoming a singer. Was that all a lie too? Unlike his father's furious tone, his mother's voice was faint and almost disappearing. It was clear that her disappointment overshadowed her anger. No matter how much Dan's parents and relatives pressed him, he remained silent. He might have been trying to think of a way to talk his way out. The room fell silent, and the atmosphere in the basement grew tense. Suddenly, my sister broke the silence by dropping to her knees and apologizing. I'm terribly sorry. It's all my fault. I've always been envious of my sister May. May has a wonderful husband like Dan and an adorable daughter like Hillary. I don't even have a boyfriend. It was the same in school. The men I liked always liked May. This time, I cheated out of jealousy. I approached Dan myself. So please don't blame Dan. In the silent basement, my sister cried out in agony. Neither her in-laws nor her relatives had ever seen her like this before. Although the anger remained, their expressions quickly turned to sorrow. Mary. I understand what you're saying. I'm glad you apologized for now. But it doesn't justify cheating. You should have known that. Someone as smart as you should have realized. Oh, how did it come to this? My parents and relatives also nodded slightly in agreement with the in-laws. My sister continued her apologies, her forehead pressed against the floor. Although my sister had done something irreparable, it seemed the in-laws and relatives' anger had slightly subsided. However, the situation changed drastically due to my actions immediately after. How funny. You're amazing, sis. You could be an actress. I'm beyond amazed, I'm in awe. I laughed loudly, pointing at my sister who was bowing on the floor. It was clearly an inappropriate action for the situation. May, why are you laughing? I'm seriously admitting my guilt and apologizing. Of course, I don't expect to be forgiven easily. But I don't deserve to be mocked. No. What are you talking about? Do you think I don't know anything? Unfortunately for you, I know everything. For example, that you have a fiancé. Immediately, everyone's eyes turned to me. Since my sister had just said she didn't have a boyfriend, this was a natural reaction. My husband, who knew nothing, finally opened his mouth and questioned my sister. What do you mean by a fiancé? Mary said she didn't have a boyfriend, right? Was she deceiving me? Calm down, Dan. There's no way that's true. May is just saying that on her own? She must be trying to corner us. Hey, May, enough already. Do you have any evidence? Before my sister could finish, I threw a thick envelope at her. When she saw the contents, her eyes widened in shock. The envelope contained a report from a private investigator. After my husband's affair became certain, I hired a private investigator. I was considering claiming alimony from my husband, so I wanted to gather thorough evidence. Investigating my sister, who was the other woman, was inevitable, and during that process, I discovered my sister had a fiancé. My sister intended to take my husband from me without telling him about her fiancé. In other words, she was deceiving my husband as well. Are you serious? Why did you approach me for an affair if you had a fiancé? You planned to deceive me from the start, didn't you? My husband accused my sister, but he wasn't in a position to say such things. He had deceived me and Hillary, and now that he was deceived, he yelled loudly. If you deceive people, you can't complain when you're deceived in return. It was clear that my husband only thought about himself. However, there was one question left for everyone but me. Why did my sister lie and cheat with my husband? My sister, who has a fiancé, has a future where she can get married and be happy. They couldn't think of a reason why she would ruin that to cheat with my husband. Everyone looked at my sister with cold and questioning eyes. Unable to bear it, my sister fearfully began to explain. I needed money. Actually, my fiancé has a large debt. I wanted to help him, so I targeted Dan. I heard he remodeled the basement for Hillary, and I reconfirmed that he was rich. They said the remodel cost $140,000. My sister planned to deceive my husband and take his money after hearing his story. My husband didn't seem to realize it at all, so she must have hidden it well. However, my sister didn't understand anything. It was a huge misunderstanding. That's a terrible story, taking someone else's money to pay off debt. But the worst part is your naive thinking, sis. Because Dan can't pay $140,000. He has zero savings. What? That can't be true. He's actually remodeling the basement. Who do you think paid for it? Who paid for it? Me, of course. I had over $140,000 saved from when I was single. What? That's ridiculous. And Dan has been buying high-end brand clothes, going to the salon and spa. You can't do that with zero savings. He tried really hard to impress you, sis. He even went into debt. Remember I told you I found receipts in Dan's car? They weren't just hotel receipts, they were from a consumer finance company. At the same time, I pulled out the receipts I had prepared. They were unmistakably from a consumer finance company, and my sister was shocked. I had also brought the consumer finance card my husband had been hiding, and when I showed it to my sister, she completely believed me and started trembling. My husband went into debt to spend money trying to impress my sister. My sister, thinking he had money, planned to take it and cheated with him. It was such a futile deception that I couldn't even laugh this time. And my sister couldn't either. She angrily marched up to my husband. Dan! You were bragging, weren't you? That you could afford high-end brands, salons, and spas with ease. That you paid $140,000 for the remodel in one go. What do you have to say now? What a complete waste. A waste? Don't mess with me. You misunderstood on your own and tried to deceive me. I spent all that money because it made Mary happy. I'm the one who wasted my effort. My husband and sister, seemingly forgetting I and my parents were there, glared at each other and yelled insults. Fueled by adrenaline, my husband even forgot to go to the bathroom, and their fight kept escalating. However, since both were in the wrong and both were foolish, this fight would be impossible to stop. My in-laws, relatives, and I tried to stop my husband and sister while nodding to each other. At that moment, we heard the sound of light footsteps coming from somewhere. The familiar sound of footsteps belonged to my 5-year-old daughter, Hillary. I had made sure she went to bed early so she wouldn't witness this chaos, but this was unexpected. Hillary, appearing confidently, smiled brightly and held something that looked like a hose in her hand. Daddy! Aunt Mary! You shouldn't fight. Both of you are wrong. You need to apologize right now. At Hillary's words, my husband and sister showed stunned expressions and immediately stopped fighting, falling silent. When a child tells you to apologize because you've done something wrong, it's only natural to comply. As Hillary said, both were at fault. Though the situation wouldn't be easily forgiven, the only thing they could do now was to apologize. Everyone, I'm sorry. I knew I was doing something wrong, but once it started, I couldn't stop. Hillary. I'm really sorry. Me too. I was only thinking about myself. I'm terribly sorry. Hillary, I'm sorry. My husband and sister bowed down with their foreheads pressed to the cold basement floor. Though they had been fighting disgracefully in front of me and the in-laws, Hillary's words must have struck a chord. The in-laws and relatives smiled while patting Hillary's head. Of course, it didn't mean they had forgiven my husband and sister, but they seemed relieved that they admitted their wrongdoings and apologized. However, in the next moment, due to my daughter's actions, a scene of chaos unfolded. If you've done something bad, you have to be punished. Because Daddy and Aunt Mary did something terrible to Mommy. I'll take care of the bad people who hurt Mommy. I'll protect Mommy. Saying this, my daughter raised the hose-like object she was holding with a determined look. On closer inspection, it was a car wash hose. And the next moment, water shot out forcefully from the hose. The water perfectly hit my husband and sister.
Hillary, stop it. Oh, it's cold and it hurts. My clothes. Stop, Hillary, please.
The more my husband and sister screamed, the stronger the water pressure became. There was no mercy. I can't take this anymore.
Daddy. Aunt Mary. It's cold and painful, isn't it? But Mommy was in even more pain. You knew that, but you still hurt her. You're like devils. This is karma.
When did she learn about karma? I was impressed by my daughter's maturity, and at the same time, my heart felt warm. Maybe my daughter had also sensed it. That my husband was cheating and causing me pain. Looking back, it might not have been a coincidence that Hillary helped me lock the basement door with the padlock I had set up. The fact that Hillary brought the car wash hose to punish my husband and sister was more than enough proof. Their cries of "Stop it, I'm sorry, forgive me," echoed outside as my husband and sister, pale-faced and soaking wet, ran around trying to escape. A few minutes later, my daughter stopped the water, and my husband and sister collapsed on the wet basement floor, trembling. To those two, I said my final words. Dan, Mary. Don't think you can deceive the family and get away with it. Most of all, I'll never forgive you for hurting Hillary. You'll get what's coming to you. Be prepared. Damn. I shouldn't have cheated. But May, wasn't this a bit much? Yes. To humiliate us in front of the family. Though they seemed like they wanted to say more, they instantly shut their mouths and nodded vigorously when Hillary aimed the hose at them. After that, I divorced my husband and claimed alimony and child support. As for my sister, her engagement was called off, and she was also ordered to pay alimony. That's because I had already informed her fiancé about everything. During the investigation, I had contacted my sister's fiancé and learned that she had run away with debts. Yes, it was my sister, not her fiancé, who had the debt. Her fiancé initially couldn't believe the affair, so on the day I locked my husband and sister in the basement, I had him wait outside the house. When Hillary was soaking my husband and sister with water, their cries of "Stop it, I'm sorry, forgive me," were loud enough to be heard outside, and he heard everything. Understanding the whole situation, her fiancé immediately called off the engagement. Moreover, the police showed up that day, turning the situation into a huge commotion. It wasn't just her fiancé who heard their screams, the neighbors did too. Worried, they called the police, who then showed up. Since then, the neighbors have been whispering about us, but it seems they know all about the affair between my husband and sister. Given the situation, my husband and sister's misdeeds would quickly become widely known. But this was the consequence of their own actions, so I could only smile wryly. As expected, the entire neighborhood soon knew about the scandal, and my husband and sister were viewed with disdain. Of course, it also got back to their workplace, and my husband, feeling out of place, ended up resigning voluntarily. To pay alimony and child support, he moved away from our hometown and now spends his days working part-time jobs to repay his debts. My sister, unable to return home and abandoned by our parents, ended up in a miserable state. As Hillary said, it's karma. If you do bad things will come back to you. They must be feeling it deeply now. Hillary. I'm sorry. Daddy and Mommy haven't been strong, and it's made you feel lonely.
I'm fine. But what about you, Mommy? You've been through a lot, haven't you? I'll protect you. I love you, Mommy.
Her small hand gripped my arm tightly. I hugged my daughter tightly. I will make sure we are happy. No, I want to be happy together. Right now, that's all I wish for.